benches and cutting through buildings as they headed for an exhibit called Creepy Critters. Creepy Critters had over 300 aquariums of different sizes, shapes, and purposes. Each aquarium held things that were slimy or scaly or hairy or generally creepy in some regard. Things like snakes, lizards, spiders, fish, and even cockroaches as big as thick as adult thumbs. In no time, the scouts crossed the zoo and entered the exhibit. Creepy Critters had a bizarre design. The building seemed to be a hapless collection of zigzagging hallways. Aquariums were set in every wall, and it felt as if the building was made of giant glass bricks. The concrete spots between the aquariums were covered in fake slime, mold, webs, and cocoons. Plastic vines and goopy gunk dangled from the ceiling. Children raced alongside the aquariums, pausing at each one just long enough to peer inside and leave fingerprints on the glass. Their parents strolled behind them with bundles of jackets slung over their arms. Sounds rebounded from the hard glass walls like noises in a cave. The scouts found a spot on an open bench. The aquarium in front of them was filled with tiny bright pink frogs resting on branches and mossy rocks, splotches of color on a green canvas. "Okay, Noah," Richie said. "Let's see that note from Blizzard again." Noah pulled the crinkled note from his pocket and smoothed it against his knee. He read aloud. "And I hardly believe it, even after seeing it myself. It's as if my mind doesn't want to believe what I saw. Does that make sense? It makes sense when I write it, and I guess that's all that matters, but I wish I knew better words and could describe things better. I wish I had Richie's brain." "Finally," Richie said as he tapped his finger on the page, "a person who knows genius when she sees it." "Quiet, Richie," Ella said. "This is important." Noah turned the page over. "Anyway, none of that matters because I'll sort this out later. What matters is what I saw in Creepy Critters today. There's an exhibit called The Chamber of Lights. It's at the end of a long hall. It's nothing but a dark room the size of a closet. There's a big aquarium in there filled with tiny fish. The fish are called flashlight fish, and they blink like fireflies. Today I saw someone," and the page ended. Noah stuffed the note back into his pocket. "Well," he said, "what do you guys make of that?" "Well, something important is obviously in that exhibit," Ella said. "But what?" Richie asked. "There's one way to find out," Noah said, rising to his feet. He was a single step down the hall when he stopped and fixed his eyes on the aquarium that housed the pink frogs. "Guys, look," he said. Lined up along the window, side by shiny pink side, the frogs were crowding the front of the aquarium. A few remained perched along the branches, but even those were staring directly at the scouts. "Huh!" Ella gasped and inched to the window, sliding the flats of her feet along the floor. Noah and Richie moved in behind her, each boy peering over one of her shoulders. The frogs began to hop. They sprang forward off their back legs and slid down the glass aquarium wall, exposing their bright pink underbellies and twiggy outstretched legs. Their white eyes, like round Christmas tree bulbs, were locked on the scouts. "I don't believe this," Noah said, but deep inside he did believe this. In fact, after everything he'd been through, he almost expected this. "They see us," Richie said. "No," Ella said. "They know us." And Ella was right. The animals, from Marlowe to Mr. Talltail to Blizzard to the pink frogs trapped in this tank, recognized Noah, Ella, and Richie. Noah didn't understand why or how, but he was certain that it had something to do with Megan. Ella reached out and touched the glass. The frogs leaped toward her fingertips. They seemed drawn to her hand the way scraps of steel are drawn to a magnet. She slid her fingertips along the glass, and the frogs hopped toward them, climbing, rolling, and springing off one another. "No way," Noah said. The scene reminded him of a plasma ball, an extraordinary clear ball in which threads of lightning streaked toward the glass the second your fingertips touched the surface. Ella seemed to control the frogs just as a person could control those tiny strands of lightning. She yanked her hand off the glass and backed away. "What?" Richie asked. "What's wrong?" "We'd better not draw any attention to ourselves," Ella warned. You're right, Noah said. We don't need any attention, especially from creepy zoo workers. Richie nodded, and they walked deeper into the exhibit. A few minutes later, Ella pointed to a small room. It protruded out into the space of the hall, its one side flushed with the wall of aquariums. The room had a single purpose, to provide a dark viewing area for the aquarium along its wall. The room looked out of place, juxtaposed with the aquarium set in the walls. There, she said. That's the Chamber of Lights. Richie and Noah nodded. The scouts knew the exhibit from previous visits. They turned, walked a third of the way down the hall, and stopped abruptly. Their eyes swelled. Richie's lips quivered. All the animals were staring at them from the tanks on either side. Snakes slithered near the fronts of their enclosures, their flickering tongues lapping the air. Tree frogs balanced on branches, their still bulbous eyes fixed outward. Fish idled along the front boundary of their tanks, their sides turned as each stared out with one eye. Lizards leaned against the glass, their gaze pointed at the scouts. Come on, Noah said. Ignore it. Just keep moving. They rushed down the hall. Even without looking at the animals, Noah knew that 100 beady eyes were fixed on him and his friends. He could feel them. They reached the Chamber of Lights. A black velvet curtain with gold rings hung over its entrance. Let's check it out, Noah said. Ella took a deep breath, and Richie shook the nervousness out of his body. Together, the scouts pushed the curtains aside and entered the small room. An aquarium was set inside the wall facing the entrance. The room was small, the size of a large closet. Richie closed the curtain behind them, and the room was enveloped in darkness. The flashlight fish started to blink, and Noah was reminded of a magical night sky filled with winking stars. He tried to move around and realized how utterly dark the room was. Richie, he said, open the curtain. Richie threw back the curtain, and the darkness huddled in a long shadow on the far side of the room. Look around, Noah said. See if you see anything. The walls and ceiling were draped in more black velvet fabric, but other than that, the room was simple, and there was nothing unusual about the tank. I don't see anything, Ella said. Noah slid his palms along the walls. Something in here grabbed Megan's attention, he said. But what? Richie asked. Nothing is in here but fish. Wait a minute, Ella said. The expression on her face changed several times as she rummaged through her thoughts. I wonder if we're looking in the wrong place. What? Noah asked. Megan specifically said, maybe she saw whatever she saw from outside this place, Ella said. Noah and Richie were quiet